Hello, everyone. Welcome in, Kaylin. Welcome in. Sorry I ran a little over my usual time. What happened was, uh, Twitch decided I needed to be logged out since I now have two-factor authentication. It's like, oh, we're gonna log you out of OBS. Don't worry, it's going to cause an issue. So that's why I kind of ran late, because I was like getting my I was getting my water, and I went to go use the bathroom right after I fixed the problem. But welcome in, welcome in. Tonight we will be watching okay. First off, we'll be reading Frankenstein. Oh my god, not watching. However, I think Frankenstein is in the public domain if people want to watch Frankenstein. Oh no, that's not what I wanted. Okay, wait. Okay, hold up. There we go, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. But we will be reading Frankenstein tonight. I am already prepared just to like jump in. I'll just talk for a little bit. How is everyone doing tonight? Oh, I forgot to do the entire intro because I was in such a rush. For those of you who don't know, I'm Vesper, the Bat of Fortune, and I intervene in fates. Welcome to my shop in this sacred space, in this strange little universe that we have. And welcome to wait, do I have pre-rolls running? Oh no. Oh no, I'm totally unprepared a little. I'm totally a little unprepared. Okay, oh no. Okay, hold up. Oh no, it's like day one again. It's like day one again. Oh yay, my first ad. Okay, do I have... Can I control ads from here? I don't think I can. I cannot. I will get out my phone and... see what I can do about those. Oh no, wait, hold up. I can probably control those from my Twitch thing. There's just so much they dump on you when you, become affiliate. Oh no, oh no, oh no, wait. Nah, that's not what I wanted. But, let's see here. Streaming tools, that's what I probably need. Nope. Analytics. Nope. Content. Nope. Settings. Affiliate. Da-da. Okay. Keep pre-roll? Yeah, pre-roll. Okay, no wait, disable pre-roll ads. When I run ads. Okay, okay, I thought I saved these changes. Okay, 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 I don't know how to work ads. You know what? I'll save that for later. I'll save that for later. Hopefully I can get someone who is better at that stuff than I am to help me with this. Let's see here. Meanwhile, we have Frankenstein to read. I hope everyone's doing well. Okay, okay. I think we were on chapter 6, I believe. Yeah, chapter 6. Well, chapter 7. Chapter 7. Because chapter 6 had Elizabeth Lavenza writing about man in Mansfield and how she was ugly and married a rich banker. So that's what we'll be doing. And if anyone hasn't noticed, I have rude. Hey, Elizabeth said it. And if anyone knows, I have some of my fates up. I'm not sure if that's what I'm going to continue to name them, but we have the awards. We have the little channel points. Right now, I just have the hydrate, the stretch, the wombo combo, and the switch PNGs. Oh, thank you for Tamagotchi. Everyone stretch, everyone hydrate if you need to. Thank you for the Tamagotchi. I'd probably eat a snack if I had it too. But yes, Tamagotchi is a cheap version of the stretch hydrate combo. And I have water with me, so I'm actually good. I'm going to try and not drink it all at once. But I'm going to work on channel points right now. We have the hydrate, the stretch, the Tamagotchi, the switch PNGs, and we have the and I actually have more. They're just hiding. I'm hiding them because they're tarot reads, and I want to be smartful about that. I want to still get a feel for that before I redeem them, before I start having them. And there'll be a few more. I may add in a southern accent one. And ooh, 15k. Oh, that might actually help me write, to be fair. 15k points, a short poem for you. Right, I'm writing that down. I'm actually writing that down. Short poem delivered to you next time you're in chat. Or while you're in chat if I'm being smartful enough. But we will have points. And can I give that to you? Oh, I might have to go into the phone to do that. Hold up. Because I need to redeem those points for you, because I know how this works. Okay, settings? No. My channel. And, view dashboard. View dashboard. Okay, Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Let me... Am I gonna have to do this on... Am I gonna have to do this on thing? Am I gonna have to do this in internet? I think I might. Okay, well, it's okay. It's okay. Let's see here. Where is it? Where is it? Oh no, I'm an idiot. Okay, hold up. I can run this in, I can run this in... I can't run this in that. Can I run this in admin mode? What? I guess it just automatically, went through. Oh, it might automatically went through because I don't have redeems. I don't have redeems, like, attached to it, so that might be it. That might be it. So that's probably it. I don't have to, like, do anything because it just goes through. I don't know. I'm not used to this. It's like I know what to do. I know what to do when I'm an admin on someone else's channel, but oh no, I'm panicking with my own. But yeah, I think it's cool because I don't have anything attached to these, not right now. Imagine if like I had like a little Tamagotchi pop up every time someone redeemed it. That'd be cute. But okay. Let's just get on with the story actually. Because I'm very excited. Like everyone knows what I have planned. I need a little familiar. I need like a small bat. I'm planning on getting like a little chatbot. A little chatbot bat. Because I love the chaos of chatbot bats. Of chatbots, honestly. Like, I see, like, other streamers like Popama and I forgot her name, but I love her chatbot. She has a cat chatbot that's just absolute insanity. So, like, I'll probably get one that's redeemed with bits and one that's redeemed with points, maybe? Not sure. That might be a bit much. But thank you for using your channel points already. I'm not sure if you already have, like, some built up from lurking, like, if there's, like, if they, like, came in backwards or something. Or if you only have 300, so hopefully we'll get you more. But, let me just, no, they don't. Oh, no! But, let's just, go ahead and start with the reading. I only have 240 and you... Oh, no! Don't worry. You'll get a sub. You'll get a sub. But what we are reading, if anyone wants to follow along, and I will pin that manually. There we go. And yeah. Come on. Hide for myself. And Let me turn up the mood music, different mood music. Time to get all Victorian. We will start off from the beginning. Chapter 7. On my return, I found... No, hold up. On my return, I found the following letter from my father. My dear Victor, you have probably waited impatiently for a letter to fix the date of your return to us. I was at first tempted to write only a few lines, merely mentioning the day on which I should expect you. But that would be a cruel kindness I dare not do. I dare not do it. Hold up. I just had to turn down the music for myself. What would be your surprise, my son, when you expected a happy and glad welcome, to behold, on the contrary, tears and wretchedness? Now, Victor, can I relate our misfortune? Absence cannot have rendered you callous to our joys and griefs, and how I shall inflict pain on my long-absent son. I wish to prepare you for the woeful news, but I know it is impossible. Even now your eye skims over the page to seek the words which are to convey to you the horrible tidings. William is dead, that sweet child whose smiles delighted and warmed my heart, who was so gentle, yet so gay. Victor, he is murdered. Oh boy. I just sometimes see the word, I'm just like, yay. The agenda. I will not attempt to console you, but will simply relate the circumstances of the transaction. Last Thursday, May 7th, I, my niece, and your 2 brothers went to walk in Plan Palais. The evening was warm and serene, and we prolonged our walk farther than usual. It was already dusk before we thought of returning. And then we discovered that William and Ernest, who had gone on before, were not to be found. We accordingly rested on a seat until they should return. Presently, Ernest came and inquired if we had seen his brother. He said that he had been playing with him, that William had run away to hide himself, that he vainly sought for him, and afterwards waited for him a long time, but that he did not return. This account rather alarmed us, and we continued to search for him until night fell, when Elizabeth conjectured that he might have returned to the house. He was not there. We returned again with torches, for I could not rest when I thought that my sweet boy had lost himself, and was exposed to all the damps and dews of the night. Elizabeth also suffered extreme anguish. About 5 in the morning, I discovered my lovely boy, whom the night before I had seen blooming and active in health, stretched on the grass, livid and motionless. The print of the murderer's finger was on his neck. He was conveyed home, and the anguish that was visible in my countenance betrayed the secret to Elizabeth. She was very earnest to see the corpse. At first I attempted to prevent her, but she persisted, entering the room where it lay, hastily examined the neck of the victim, and clasping her hands, exclaimed, "Oh God, I have murdered my darling child." She fainted, and was restored with extreme difficulty. When she again lit, it was only to weep and sigh. She told me that same evening William had teased her to let him wear hold up. She told me that same evening William had teased her to let him wear a very valuable miniature she possessed of your mother. The picture is gone, and was doubtless the temptation which urged the murderer to the deed. We have no trace of him at present, although our exertions to discover him are unremitted. They shall not restore my beloved William. Come, dearest Victor, you alone can console Elizabeth. She weeps continually, and accuses herself unjustly as the cause of his death. Her words pierce my heart. We are all unhappy. We are all unhappy, eh. But will not that be an additional motive for you, my son, to return and be our comforter? Your dear mother, alas, Victor, I now say, thank God she did not live to witness the cruel, miserable death of her youngest darling. Come, Victor, not brooding thoughts of your vengeance against the assassin, the feelings of peace and gentleness that will heal instead of festering the wounds of our minds. Enter the house of mourning, my friend, but with kindness and affection for those who love you, and not with hatred for your enemies. Your affectionate and afflicted father, Alphonse Frankenstein. Geneva, May 12, 17XX. Clerval, I had watched my countenance as I read this letter. I was surprised to observe the despair that succeeded to the joy I had first expressed on receiving news from my friends. I threw the letter on the table and covered my face with my hands. My dear Frankenstein, exclaimed Henry, when he perceived me weep with bitterness. Are you always to be unhappy? My dear friend, what has happened? I motioned him to take up the letter, while I walked up and down the room in extremest agitation. Tears also gushed from the eyes of Clerval as he read the account of my misfortune. I can offer you no consolation, my friend, said he. Your disaster is irreparable. What do you intend to do? To instantly go to Geneva. Come with me, Henry, to order the horses. During our walk, Clerval endeavored to say a few words of consolation. He could only express his heartfelt sympathy. Poor William, said he, dear lovely child, he now sleeps with his angel mother. Who that had seen him bright and joyous in his young beauty, but must weep over his untimely loss. To die so miserably, to feel the murderer's grasp. How much more a murderer that could destroy such a radiant innocence? Poor little fellow, one only consolation have we, his friends, mourn and weep, but he is at rest. The pain is over, his sufferings are at an end forever. A sod covers his gentle form, and he knows no pain. He can no longer be a subject for pity. He must reserve that for his miserable survivors. Damn, Clerval, you really had to go there, didn't you? Clerval spoke thus as we hurried through the streets. The words impressed themselves on my mind, and I remembered them afterwards in solitude. But now, as soon as the horses arrived, I hurried into a cabriolet and bade farewell to my friend. My journey was very melancholy. At first I wished to hurry on, for I longed to console and sympathize with my loved and sorrowing friends. But when I drew near my native town, I slackened my progress. I could hardly sustain the multitude of feelings that crowded into my mind. I passed through scenes familiar to my youth, but which I had not seen for nearly 6 years. How altered nearly everything might be during that time. One sudden, desolating change had taken place. But 1,000 little circumstances might have by degrees worked other alterations, which, although they were done more tranquilly, might not be the less decisive. Fear overcame me. I dared not advance, dreading 1,000 nameless evils that made me tremble, although I was unable to define them. I remained 2 days at Lausanne in this painful state of mind. I contemplated the lake. The waters were placid, all around calm, and snowy mountains. The palaces of nature were not changed. By degrees, the calm and heavenly scene restored me, and I continued my journey towards Geneva. The road ran by the side of the lake, which became narrower as I approached my native town. I discovered more distinctly the black sides of Jura the bright summit of Mont Blanc. I wept like a child. Dear mountains, my own beautiful lake, how do you welcome your wanderer? Your summits are clear, and the sky and lake are blue and placid. Is this to prognosticate peace, or to mock at my unhappiness? I fear, my friend, that I shall render myself tedious by dwelling on these preliminary circumstances. But there were days of comparative happiness, and I think of them with pleasure. My country, my beloved country, who by a native can tell the delight I took in again, beholding my streams, thy mountains, and more than all, thy lovely lake. Yet, as I drew nearer home, grief and fear overcame me. Night also closed around, and when I could hardly see the dark mountains, I still feel... And when I could hardly see the dark mountains, I felt still more gloomily. The picture appeared a vast and dim scene of evil. I foresaw obscurely that I was destined to become the most wretched of human beings. Alas, I prophesied truly. I failed only in one circumstance, that in all the misery I imagined and dreaded, I did not conceive the 100th part of the anguish I was destined to endure. Welcome in, wherever. Ahoy, ahoy. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing on with Frankenstein. Thank you. Unfortunately, they do not work backwards, so you have to start from 300, unfortunately. It was completely dark when I arrived in the environs of Geneva. The gates of the town were already shut. How are you doing? Whatever. I'm sorry, I should greet you. I should ask what's up, what's happening. It was completely dark when I arrived in the environs of Geneva. The gates of the town were already shut, and I was obliged to pass the night at Checheron, a village at the distance of half a league from the city. The sky was serene, and as I was unable to rest, I resolved to visit the spot where my poor William had been murdered. As I could not pass through the town, I was obliged to cross the lake in a boat to arrive at Plainpalais. During the short voyage, I saw the lightning playing on the summit of Mont Blanc in the most beautiful figures. The storm approached rapidly, and on landing I ascended a low hill that I might observe its progress, and imagined the heavens were clouded, and I soon felt rain coming slowly in large drops, but its violence quickly increased. Nothing much. Today's been a lazy day, honestly. Well, let's continue the laziness a bit, shall we? With a bit of reading. Just lay back, let the Victorian ambience take you, and let my voice read to you Frankenstein, who's poking me. Okay. Who's poking me on Discord? Okay. I quitted my seat and walked on, although the darkness and storm increased every minute, and the thunder burst with a terrific crash over my head. It was echoed from Salève, the Jura, and the Alps of Savoy. Vivid flashes of lightning dazzled my eyes, illuminating the lake and making it appear like a vast sheet of fire. Then for an instant, everything seemed of a pitchy darkness, until the eye recovered itself from the preceding flash. The storm, as is often the case in Switzerland, appeared at once in various parts of the heavens. The most violent storm hung exactly north of town, over that part of lake which lies between the promontory of Bellerive and the village of Coppet. Another storm in Jura with faint flashes, and another darkened and sometimes disclosed the mole, a peaked mountain to the east of the lake. While I watched the tempest, so beautiful yet terrific, I wandered on with a hasty step. This noble war in the sky elevated my spirits. I clasped my hands and exclaimed aloud, "William, my dear angel, this is thy funeral, this thy dirge." As I said these words, I perceived in the gloom a figure which stole behind a clump of trees near me. I stood, fixed, gazing intently. I could not be mistaken. A flash of lightning illuminated the object and discovered its shape plainly to me. A gigantic stature, and the deformity of its aspect, more hideous than belongs to humanity, instantly informed me that was the wretch, the filthy Damon to whom I've given life. What did he there? Could he be, I shuddered at the conception, the murderer of my brother? No sooner did that idea cross my imagination than I became convinced of its truth. My teeth chattered, and I was forced to lean against a tree for support. The figure passed me quickly, and I lost it in the gloom. Nothing in human shape could have destroyed that fair child. He was the murderer. I could not doubt it. The mere presence of the idea was an irresistible proof of the fact. I thought of pursuing the devil, but it would have been in vain, for another flash discovered him hanging among the rocks of the nearly perpendicular ascent of Mont Saleve, and a hill that bounds Plainpalais to the south. He soon reached the summit and disappeared. Let me have a sip. I remained motionless. Thunder ceased, but the rain still continued. The scene was enveloped in an impenetrable darkness. I revolved in my mind the events which I had until now sought to forget. The whole train of my progress towards the creation, the appearance of the work of my own hands alive at my bedside. Its departure. 2 years had now nearly elapsed since the night on which he first received life. And was this his first crime? Alas, I had turned loose into the world a depraved wretch, whose delight was in carnage and misery. Had he not murdered my brother? Now I can conceive the anguish that I suffered during the remainder of the night, which I spent cold and wet in the open air. I did not feel the inconvenience of the weather. My imagination was busy in scenes of evil and despair. I considered the being whom I cast among mankind, and endowed with the will and power to effect purposes of horror, such as the deed which he had now done, nearly in the light of my own vampire, my own spirit let loose from the grave, and forced to destroy all that was dear to me. Day dawned, and I directed my steps towards the town. The gates were open, and I hastened to my father's house. My first thought was to discover what I knew of the murderer, and cause instant pursuit to be made. But I paused when I reflected on the story that I had to tell. A being whom I myself had formed and endued with life had met me at midnight among the precipices of an inaccessible mountain. I remembered also the nervous fever with which I had been seized at the... Hold up. I remember the nervous fever with which I had been seized just at the time that I dated my creation, and which would give an air of delirium to a tale otherwise so utterly improbable. I well know that if any other had communicated such a relation to me, I should have looked upon it as the ravings of insanity. Besides, the strange nature of the animal would elude all pursuit, even if I were so far credited to persuade my relatives to commence it. And then what But, and then, of what use would be the pursuit? Who could arrest a creature capable of scaling and overhanging the sides of months to leave? These reflections determined me, and I resolved to remain silent. It was about 5 in the morning when I entered my father's house. I told the servants not to disturb the family, and went into the library to attend their usual hour of rising. 6 years had elapsed, past as a dream, but for one indelible trace, and I stood in the same place where I had last embraced my father before my departure for Ingolstadt. Beloved and venerable parent, he still remained to me. I gazed on the picture of my mother, who stood over the mantelpiece. It was a historical subject painted at my father's desire, and represented Caroline Beaufort in an agony of despair, kneeling by the coffin of her dead father. Her garb was rustic, and her cheek pale. There was an air of dignity and beauty that hardly permitted the sentiment of pity. Below the picture was a miniature of William, and my tears flowed when I looked upon it. When I was thus engaged, Ernest entered. He had heard me alive, and hastened to welcome me. He expressed a sorrowful delight to see me. "Welcome, my dearest Victor," said he. "I wish you had come 3 months ago, and then you would have found us all joyous and delighted. To us now to share a misery which nothing can alleviate. Yet your presence will, I hope, revive our father, who seems sinking under his misfortune, and your persuasions will induce Elizabeth to cease her vain and tormenting self-accusations. Poor William, he was our darling and our pride." Tears, unrestrained, fell from my brother's eyes. A sense of mortal agony crept over my frame. Before, I had only imagined the wretchedness of my desolated home. The reality came on me as a new, and not less, terrible disaster. I tried to calm Ernest. I inquired more minutely concerning my father, and her I named my cousin. "She, most of all," said Ernest, "requires consolation. She accused herself of having caused the death of my dear brother." Hold up. "She, most of all," said Ernest, "requires consolation. She accused herself of having caused the death of my brother, and that made her very wretched. But since the murderer has been discovered—" "The murderer discovered? Good God, how can that be? Who could attempt to pursue him? It is impossible. One might as well try to overtake the winds or confine a mountain stream with a straw. I saw him too, he was free last night." "I do not know what you mean," replied my brother in accents of wonder. "But to us the discovery we have made completes our mystery. No one would believe it at first, and even now Elizabeth will not be convinced, notwithstanding all the evidence. Indeed, who would credit that Justine Moritz, who was so amiable and fond of all the family, could suddenly become capable of so frightful, appalling a crime? Justine Moritz? Poor girl. Is she accused? But it is wrongfully. Everyone knows that. No one believes it, surely, Ernest?" "No one did at first, but several circumstances came out that have almost forced conviction upon us, and her own behavior has been so confused as to add to the evidence of facts a weight that leaves no hope for doubt. But she will be tried today, and then you will hear it all." "You will..." Hold on, let me take a sip. He related that, the morning on which the murder of poor William had been discovered, Justine had been taken ill, and confined to her bed for several days. During this interval, one of her servants, happening to examine the apparel she wore on the night of the murder, had discovered in her pocket the picture of my mother, which had been judged to be which had been judged to be the temptation of the murderer. The servant instantly showed it to one of the others, who without saying a word to any of the family, went to a magistrate, and upon their deposition, Justine was apprehended. On being charged with the fact, the poor girl confirmed the suspicion in a great measure by her extreme confusion of manner. This was a strange tale, but did not shake my faith, and I replied earnestly, "You are all mistaken. I know the murderer. Justine, poor Justine, is innocent." At that instant, my father entered. I saw unhappiness deeply impressed on his countenance, but he endeavored to welcome me cheerfully. After we had exchanged our mournful greeting, we have introduced some other topic than that of our disaster. And our Ernest exclaimed, "Good God, Papa! Victor says he knows who was the murderer of poor William." "We do also, unfortunately," replied my father. "Whereas indeed I had rather been... Oh, wow. For indeed I had rather have been forever ignorant than have discovered so much depravity and ingratitude in one I valued so highly." "My dear father, you are mistaken. Justine is innocent." "If she is, God forbid that she should suffer as guilty. She is to be tried today, and I hope, sincerely hope, that she will be acquitted." This speech calmed me. I was firmly convinced in my own mind that Justine, and indeed every human being, was guiltless of this murder. I had no fear, therefore, that any circumstantial evidence would be brought forward strong enough to convict her. My tale was not one to announce publicly. Its astounding horror would be looked upon as madness by the vulgar. Did anyone indeed exist except I, the creator, who believe, unless his senses convinced him, in the existence of the living monument of presumption and rash ignorance which I had let loose upon the world? We were soon joined by Elizabeth. Time had altered her since I last beheld her. It had endowed her with loveliness surpassing the beauty of her childish years. There was the same candor, the same vivacity, but was allied to an expression full of sensibility and intellect. She welcomed me with the greatest affection. "Your arrival, my dear cousin," said she, "fills me with hope. Perhaps we'll find some means to justify my poor guiltless Justine. Alas, who is safe if she be convicted of crime? I rely on her innocence as certainly as I do upon my own. Our misfortune is doubly hard to us. We have not only lost that lovely darling boy, but this poor girl, whom I sincerely love, is to be torn away by an even worse fate. If she is condemned, I never shall know joy more. But she will not. I am sure she will not. And then I shall be happy again, even after the sad death of my little William." "She is innocent, my Elizabeth," said I. "That shall be proved. Fear nothing, but let your spirits be cheered by the assurance of her acquittal. How kind and generous you are! Everyone else believes in her guilt, and that made me wretched. For I knew it was impossible, and to see everyone else prejudiced in so deadly a manner rendered me hopeless and despairing." She wept. "Dearest niece," said my father, "dry your tears. If she is, as you believe, innocent, rely on the justice of our laws, and the activity with which I shall prevent the slightest shadow of partiality." So that happened. So William is dead. Wow, we are just... Wow, this really is everyone's gonna die story, isn't it? Everyone's going to die except for Henry, because he's the true love. The OG. The OG. The OG gay of the year. Oh wait, that's a T. But, kind of always seeing stuff happening. I'm pretty sure it was the OG Game of Thrones. Yeah. Kind of always seeing stuff happening. We don't know if Justine is innocent or not. But, like, I'm kind of getting Count of Monte Cristo vibes, where there was, like, an intricate revenge plan that went on. That's what I'm kind of getting from this. That's what the monster's planning. He killed William, and then he put the evidence on Justine. So kind of like starting with the most unrelated people and then working. Well, no. We killed William and we just happened to hit Justine on the way. It's like killing William was kind of a, oh, we're going to murder this child. This child's dead. We're gonna murder this child just to show that we have no values. And we're just gonna put it on Justine, who was poor. And then she ended up being a maid to the mother who is also dead. And then she went on to be a maid for Elizabeth. But, Chapter 8. How many chapters do we have, actually? Let me check. Chapter 8. Oh, we have 24 chapters. Okay. No, wait. I think I got that wrong. No, we had 20. We had 20-something chapters. Okay. So we might be going on till 11 tonight. Okay, so let me go back to chapter 8. We passed a few sad hours until 11 o'clock, when the trial was to commence. My father and the rest of the family being obliged to attend as witnesses, I accompanied them to the court. During the whole of this wretched mockery of justice, I suffered living torture. It was to be decided whether the result of my curiosity and lawless devices would cause the death of my two fellow beings, one a smiling babe full of innocence and joy, the other far more dreadfully murdered and with every aggravation of infamy that could make the murder memorable in horror. Justine was also a girl of merit, and possessed qualities which promised to render her life happy. And now all was to be obliterated in an ignominious grave, and I the cause. 1,000 times I would have rather confessed myself guilty of the crime ascribed to Justine. I was absent when it was committed, and such a declaration would have been considered the ravings of a madman, and not have exculpated her, and would not have exculpated her who suffered through me. The appearance of Justine was calm. She was dressed in mourning, and her countenance, always engaging, was rendered by the solemnity of her feelings exquisitely beautiful. Yet she appeared confident in innocence, and did not tremble, although gazed and excredited by thousands, for all the kindness which her beauty might otherwise have excited, was obliterated in the minds of spectators by the imagination of the enormity she was supposed to have committed. She was tranquil, yet her tranquility was evidently constrained, and as her confusion before had adduced as a proof of her guilt, she worked up her mind to an appearance of courage. When she entered the court, she threw her eyes around it, and quickly discovered where we were seated. A tear seemed to dim her eye when she saw us, but she quickly removed herself, and a look of sorrowful affection seemed to attest her utter guiltlessness. The trial began, and after the advocate against her had stated the charge, several witnesses were called. Several strange facts combined against her, which might have staggered any one who had not such proof of her innocence as I had. She had been out the whole of the night on which murder had been committed, and towards the morning had been perceived by a market woman not far from the spot the body of the murdered child had afterwards found. The woman asked her what she did there, but she looked very strangely and only returned a confused and unintelligible answer. She returned to the house about 8 o'clock, when one inquired where she had passed the night. She replied that she had been looking for the child and demanded earnestly if anything had been found her concerning him. When shown the body, she fell into violent hysterics and kept her bed for several days. The picture was then produced, which the servant had found in her pocket. When Elizabeth, in a faltering voice, proved that it was the same which, an hour before the child had been missed, she had placed around his neck, a murmur of horror and indignation filled the court. Justine was called on for her defense. As the trial proceeded, her countenance altered. Surprise, horror, and misery were strongly expressed. Sometimes she struggled with her tears, but when she desired to plead, she collected her powers and spoke in an audible though variable voice. Let me have a sip. God knows, she said, how entirely I am innocent. But I do not pretend my protestation should acquit me. I rest my innocence on plain and simple explanation of the facts which have been adduced against me. I hope the character I have always borne will incline my judges to a favorable interpretation, where any circumstances appears doubtful or suspicious. She then related, by the permission of Elizabeth, she had passed the evening of night on which the murder had been committed at the house of an aunt at Shane, a village situated about a league from Geneva. On her return, about 9 o'clock, she met a man who asked her if she had seen anything of the child who had been lost. She was alarmed by this account, and passed several hours in looking for him, and the gates of Geneva were shut, and she was forced to remain several hours of the night in a barn belonging to a cottage, being unwilling to call up the inhabitants, to whom she was well known. Most of the night she spent there watching. Towards morning she believed that she had slept for a few minutes. Some steps disturbed her, and she awoke. It was dawn, and she quitted her asylum, that she might again endeavor to find my brother. She had gone near the spot where his body lay. It was without her knowledge. That she had been bewildered when questioned by the market woman was not surprising, since she had passed a sleepless night, and the fate of poor William was yet uncertain. Concerning the picture, she could give no account. I know, continued the unhappy victim, how heavily and fatally one circumstance weighs against me. I have no power of explaining it, and when I express my utter ignorance, I am only left to conjecture concerning the probabilities by which it might have been placed in my pocket. But here I am also checked. I believe that I have no enemy on earth, and none surely would have been so wicked as to destroy me so wantonly. Did the murderer place it there? I have no opportunity afforded him for so doing, or so, if I had, why should he have stolen a jewel to part with it again so soon? I commit my cause to the justice of my judges, yet I see no room for hope. I beg permission to have a few witnesses examined concerning my character, and if their testimony shall not overweigh my supposed guilt, I must be condemned, although I would pledge my salvation on my innocence. Several witnesses were called who had known her for many years. They spoke well of her. Fear and hatred of the crime of which they supposed her guilty rendered them timorous and unwilling to come forward. Elizabeth saw even this last resource. With excellent dispositions and irreproachable conduct, about to fail the accused, when, although violently agitated, she desired permission to address the court. Let me have a sip. I am, said she, the cousin of the unhappy child who was murdered, or rather his sister, who I was educated by and have lived with his parents ever since, even long before his birth. It may therefore be judged indecent in me to come forward on this occasion. But when I see a fellow creature about to perish the cowardice of her pretended friends, I wish to be allowed to speak, that I may say what I know of her character. I am well acquainted with the accused. I have lived in the same house with her, at one time for 5 and another for nearly 2 years. During all that period, she appeared to me the most amiable and benevolent of human creatures. She nursed Madame Frankenstein, my aunt, in her last illness, with the greatest affection and care, and afterwards attended her own mother during a tedious illness, in a manner that excited the admiration of all who knew her. Afterwards she again lived in my uncle's home, where she was beloved by all the family. She was warmly attached to the child who is now dead, and acted towards him like a most affectionate mother. For my own part, I do not hesitate to say that, notwithstanding all evidence produced against her, I believe and rely on her perfect innocence. She had no temptation for such an action. As to the bauble which the chief professed, if she had earnestly desired it, I should have willingly given it to her. So much do I esteem and value her. A murmur of approbation followed Elizabeth's simple and powerful appeal, but was excited by her generous interference, and not in favor of poor Justine, on whom the public indignation was turned with renewed violence, charging her with the blackest ingratitude. She herself wept as Elizabeth spoke, but she did not answer. My own agitation and anguish was extreme during the whole trial. I believed in her innocence, I knew it. Could the Damon, who had, I did not for a minute doubt, murdered my brother also in this hellish sport, have betrayed the innocent to death and ignominy? I could not sustain the horror of my situation, and perceived that the popular voice, and the countenances of the judges, had already condemned my unhappy victim. I rushed out of the court in agony. The tortures of the accused did not equal mine. She was sustained by innocence. The fangs of remorse tore my bosom, and would not forego their hold. I passed a night of unmingled wretchedness. In the morning I went to the court. My lips and throat were parched. I dared not ask the fatal question, but I was known, and the officer guessed the cause of my visit. The ballots had been thrown. They were all black, and Justine was condemned. I cannot pretend to describe what I then felt. I had experienced the sensations of horror. I have endeavored to bestow upon them adequate expressions, but words cannot convey an idea of the heart-sickening despair that I then endured. The person to whom I addressed myself added that Justine had already confessed her guilt. That evidence, he observed, was hardly required in so glaring a case, but I am glad of it. Indeed, none of our judges like to condemn a criminal upon circumstantial evidence, be it ever so decisive. This was strange and unexpected intelligence. What could it mean? Had my eyes deceived me? And was I really as mad as the whole world would believe me to be, if I disclosed the object of my suspicion? I hastened to return home, and Elizabeth eagerly demanded the result. My cousin, replied I, is decided as you may have expected. All judges had rather 10 innocent chuffs. All judges had rather that 10 innocent should suffer than that one guilty should escape, but she has confessed. This was a dire blow to poor Elizabeth, who had relied with firmness upon Justine's innocence. Alas, said she, how shall I ever again believe in human goodness? Justine, whom I loved and esteemed as my sister, how could she put on those smiles of innocence only to betray? Her mild eyes seemed incapable of any severity or guile, and yet she has committed a murder. Soon after we heard the poor victim had expressed a desire to see my cousin. My father wished her not to go, but said that he left it to her own judgment and feelings to decide. Yes, said Elizabeth, I will go, although she is guilty, and you, Victor, shall accompany me. I cannot go alone. The idea of this visit was torture to me, yet I could not refuse. We entered the gloomy prison chamber and beheld Justine sitting on some straw at the farther end. Her eyes were manacled. Her hands were manacled, and her head rested on her knees. She rose on seeing us enter, and when we were left alone with her, she threw herself at the feet of Elizabeth, weeping bitterly. My cousin wept also. Oh, Justine, said she, why did you rob me of my last consolation? I relied on your innocence, and although I was then very wretched, I was not so miserable as I am now. And do you also believe I am so very, very wicked? Would you also join with my enemies to crush me, to condemn me as a murderer? Her voice was suffocated with sobs. Rise, my poor girl, said Elizabeth. Why do you kneel if you are innocent? I am not one of your enemies. I believed you guiltless, notwithstanding every evidence, until I heard that you had yourself declared your guilt. That report, you say, is false, and be assured, dear Justine, that nothing can shake my confidence in you for a moment, but your own confession. I did confess, but I confessed a lie. I confessed that I might obtain absolution, but now that falsehood lies heavier at my heart than all my other sins. The God of heaven forgive me. Ever since I was condemned, my confessor has besieged me. He threatened and menaced until I almost began to think that I was the monster he said I was. He threatened excommunication and hellfire in my last moments, if I continued to endure it. Dear lady, I had none to support me. All looked on me as a wretch doomed to ignominy and perdition. What could I do? In an evil hour I subscribed to a lie, and now only am I truly miserable. She paused, weeping, and then continued. I thought with horror, my sweet lady, that you should believe your Justine, whom your blessed aunt had so highly honored, and whom you loved, was a creature capable of crime which none the devil himself could have perpetrated. Dear William, dearest blessed child, I soon shall see you again in heaven, where we all shall be happy, and that consoles me, going as I am to suffer ignominy and death. Oh, Justine, forgive me for having one moment distrusted you. Why did you confess? But Do not mourn, dear girl, do not fear. I will proclaim, I will prove your innocence. I will melt the stony hearts of your enemies by my tears and prayers. You shall not die. You, my playfellow, my companion, my sister. Perish on the scaffold? No, no. I never could survive so horrible a misfortune. Justine shook her head mournfully. I do now not fear to die, she said. That pang is past. God raises my weakness and gives me courage to endure the worst. I leave a sad and bare world, and if you remember me, think of me as one unjustly condemned. I am resigned to the fate awaiting me. Learn from me, dear lady, to submit in patience to the will of heaven. During this conversation, I retired to a corner of the prison room, where I could conceal the horror's anguish that possessed me. Despair, who dared talk of that? The poor victim, who was on the morrow was to pass the awful boundary between life and death, felt not as I did, such deep and bitter agony. I gnashed my teeth and ground them together, uttering a groan that came from my inmost soul. Justine started. When she saw who it was, she approached me and said, Dear sir, you are very kind to visit me. You, I hope, do not believe that I am guilty? I could not answer. No, Justine, said Elizabeth. He is more convinced of your innocence than I was, for even when he heard that you had confessed, he did not credit it. I truly thank him. In these moments, I feel the sincerest gratitude towards those who think of me with kindness. How sweet is the affection of others to such a wretch as I am. It removes more than half my misfortune, and I feel as if I could die in peace, now that my innocence is acknowledged by you, dear lady, and your cousin. Thus the poor sufferer tried to comfort others and herself. She indeed gained the resignation she desired. But I, the true murderer, felt the never-dying worm alive in my bosom, which allowed no hope or consolation. Elizabeth also wept. She was unhappy. She was also the misery of innocence, which, like a cloud that passes over the fair moon, for a while hides but cannot tarnish its brightness. Anguish and despair had penetrated the core of my heart. I bore hell within me, which nothing could extinguish. We stayed several hours with Justine, and it was with great difficulty that Elizabeth could tear herself away. I wish, cried she, that I were to die with you. I cannot live in this world of misery. Justine assumed an air of cheerfulness, while she with difficulty repressed her bitter tears. She embraced Elizabeth and said in a voice of half-suppressed emotion, Farewell, sweet lady, dearest Elizabeth, my beloved and only friend. May heaven and its bounty bless and preserve you. May this be the last misfortune that you will ever suffer. Live and be happy, and make others so. And on the morrow, Justine died. Elizabeth's heart-rending eloquence failed to move the judges from their settled conviction in the criminality of the saintly sufferer. My passionate and indignant appeals were also lost upon them, and when I received their cold answers and heard the harsh, unfeeling reasoning of these men, my purposed avowal died away on my lips. Thus I might proclaim myself a madman, but not revoke the sentence passed upon my wretched victim. She perished on the scaffold as a murderess. From the tortures of my own heart, I turned to contemplate the deep and voiceless grief of my Elizabeth. This was also my doing, my father's woe, and the desolation of that late so smiling home. All was the work of my thrice accursed hands. Ye weep, unhappy ones, but these are not your last tears. Again shall you raise the funeral wail, and sound of your lamentation shall again and again be heard. Frankenstein, your son, your kinsman, your such much loved. Hold on. Frankenstein, your kinsman, your early, much loved friend. He who would spend such each vital drop of blood for your sakes, who has no thought nor sense of joy except as it is mirrored also in your dear countenances, would fill the air with blessings and spend his life in serving you. He bids you weep, to shed countless tears, happy beyond his hopes, if thus inexorable fate be satisfied, and if the destruction pause before the peace of the grave has succeeded your sad torments. Thus spoke my pathetic soul, as torn by remorse, horror, and despair. I beheld those I loved spend vain sorrow upon the graves of William and Justine, the first hapless victims to my unhallowed arts. And that was chapter 8. Why is everyone so dramatic? I guess it's what you get when you hang out with Lord Byron and like all his friends. But so William's dead. Justine's now dead. Everyone's probably gonna die. Who's gonna die next? Probably the dad, right? I don't know. It's been a while since I read that, rest in peace, buddy, yep. Rest in peace, Justine. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, William. Rest in peace, this entire house. Let's be real. Frankenstein fucked up with his alchemy. Frankenstein fucked up. He messed with the laws of nature. Which, as we all know, does not end well. But, he kind of knows. I feel like he's making himself really important. It's like, oh, woe is me. Everything's done by my hands. Listen. You may have been a bad parent, and you may have completely abandoned your child to the world, and kind of, like screamed when he approached you in your bedroom, just like looking for him, just like looking to, he was just looking for a parent to like deal with his nightmares, deal with the storm. And you screamed. But, not everything needs to be blamed on the parent. Some people are just horrible. But, yeah, this is all on you, buddy. But you shouldn't be so dramatic about it. I mean, like, let's be real. If Frankenstein is going around murdering, if the monster... Well, not the monster. If, Nameless? I think he's called Nameless. If Nameless is going around murdering people when he had the chance to not murder people, kind on him. Kind of on him. Yeah, I honestly struggle sympathizing with the monster a lot of times. Like, another thing is that, I'm pretty sure, like, a lot of monsters, a lot of the movies just show the monster kind of, like, going about. I haven't watched any of the movies. It kind of feels like the monster exists, and then Frankenstein has his, like, castle raided. I feel like that's what the movie is. But it's kind of like, no, the monster goes out, he learns about people, and then he comes back and murders all of all of Frankenstein's family. I mean, I'm not sure if he murders all of Frankenstein's family, but let's be real. Yeah, it's truly heartbreaking. But when you choose, yeah, yeah, it's like I think he went out and uh, I think we're about to learn his entire backstory. I think there's like an entire chapter dedicated to it, if not multiple. But it's uh, like, like I know your father abandoned you, but let's not Sigmund Freud this. Yeah, he's still going around murdering people, right? It's like, it's like, if Frankenstein didn't murder, if the monster wasn't going around murdering people, you can't really feel bad for him. Like, for its time, it was probably on point, and like, I feel like a lot of people still kind of, they still understand the trauma, like what happened with Frankenstein is kind of like what I imagined happened with Yotsuyu. Yotsuyu had, I always go to Yotsuyu when I'm like talking about trauma because Yotsuyu is also another person who turned to anger. She just never got out of it. And like, that's why a lot of people relate to Yotsuyu because they had to turn to anger to get out of it. But my father left me isn't admissible in court. Right. Like, Frankenstein is good. Like the monster is relatable, but there's a caveat in that relatability. It's like, I understand why you murdered people, but you shouldn't have murdered people. Your daddy issues is not a reason to murder people. What you should have done is kidnapped his entire family and told them what your dad did and make them get his ass together. That's what you should have done. Just my opinion. The thing about Sue is that I find much more sympathetic and says when she lost her memory, she knew she was traumatized and scared, but chose to be kind and gentle, right? And here's the thing, like, I think is she's still like, I feel like if she regained her memory in a safe space, if she regained her memory in like a safe space and was not like attacked by her parents and attacked by her brother, she might have been just like outright redeemable. Like she did some horrible crimes and her trauma does not exclude her from that. But I felt like if she gained her memory back and was in a safe space, she could have healed and she could have at least reversed some of the damage she did. But then that happened. I don't want to spoil anything because whatever is thinking about the free trial when Stormblood is added to it. So I don't want to reveal the entire Yotsuyu thing because that is like amazing. But let's be real, what she did when she did gain her memory back was still amazing. She deserved that. She deserved that. She did what a whole lot of people under trauma wanted to do. I'm not sure if it'll come to Game Pass because of how weird that would be, I think. But I highly suggest getting it when 6.5 comes out. Okay, on to chapter 9. No more gushing about Final Fantasy XIV. Yes, I love Suyu and Grandpa. I kind of like how the Endwalker crests were still like, oh, there's still trauma here. There's still stuff left over from Yotsuyu and what she did. But it's like, we kind of caused Yotsuyu. Let's be frank. It's like, and there was like a small cult forming because of crazy old lady and Endwalker. Oh my god. I'm so glad that old lady died. Well, she didn't die. No, wait, yeah, she did die. The old lady died. Did she die? Yeah, I think she died. She deserved to die, to be frank. Anyone trying to worsen Yotsuyu's image, even father deserves to die. It's like, no, we already know how bad she was. She could have been good, but no. No, you people ruined it. Again, I'm not saying she deserves forgiveness, but she deserved, like, a chance to help heal. And I think if she was alive, she would have done more than like outright killing her would have. I love the main thing I love about Stormblood is the foil she is to Fordola, and how Fordola is a foil to her. Yeah, she should have paid for her sins, but she also should have been given a chance. Yeah. Yeah, that started when she was a kid. That started when she was a kid. Okay, chapter 9. I didn't know I would somehow relate the most Asian part of Stormblood to Frankenstein, but here we are. Like the most Japanese part of of Final Fantasy XIV to a very Western story, but it makes sense. Nothing is more painful to the human mind than after the feelings have been worked up by a quick succession of events, the dead calmness and inaction and certainty which follows, and deprives the soul both of hope and fear. Justine died, she rested, and I was alive. The blood flowed freely in my veins, but a weight of despair and remorse pressed on my heart, which nothing could remove. Sleep fled from my eyes, and I wandered like an evil spirit, for I committed deeds of mischief beyond description. Horrible and more... For I had committed deeds of mischief beyond description, horrible and much more, I persuaded myself, was yet behind. Yet my heart overflowed with kindness, and... Sorry, excuse me. Yet my heart overflowed with kindness and the love of virtue. I had begun life with benevolent intentions, and thirsted for the moment when I should put them in practice, and make myself useful to my fellow beings. Now all was blasted, instead of that serenity of conscience which allowed me to look back upon the past with such self-satisfaction. From thence to gather the promise of new hopes, I was seized by remorse and the sense of guilt, which hurried me away to a hell of intense tortures, such as no language can describe. This state of mind preyed upon my health, which had perhaps nearly entirely recovered from the first shock it had sustained. I shunned the face of man. All sound of joy or complacency was torture to me. Solitude was my only consolation. Deep, dark, death-like solitude. On sips. My father observed with pain the alterations perceptible in my disposition and habits, and endeavored by arguments to deduce from the feelings of his serene conscience and guiltless life, to inspire me with fortitude, and awaken in me the courage to dispel the dark cloud which brooded over me. "Do you think, Victor," said he, "that I do not suffer also? No one could love a child more than I loved your brother." Tears came into his eyes as he spoke. "But it is not a duty to the survivors that we should refrain from augmenting their unhappiness by an appearance of immoderate grief. It is also a duty owed to yourself, for excessive sorrow prevents improvement or enjoyment or even the discharge of daily usefulness. Without such, no man is fit for society." The advice, although good, was totally inapplicable in my case. I should have been the first to hide my grief and console my friends. If remorse had not mingled its bitterness and terror its alarm with my other sensations, now I could only answer my father with a look of despair and endeavor to hide myself from his view. About this time we retired to our house in Bellerive. This change was particularly agreeable to me. The shutting of the gates regularly at 10 o'clock and the impossibility of remaining on the lake after that hour had rendered our residence within the halls of Geneva very irksome to me. I was now free. Often after the rest of the family had retired for the night, I took the boat, passed many hours upon the water. Sometimes with my sails set, I was carried by the wind, and sometimes after rowing into the middle of the lake, I left the boat to pursue its own course, and gave way my own insufferable reflections. I was often tempted, when all was at peace around me, and I the only quiet thing that wandered restless in a scene so beautiful and heavenly, if I, except some bat or the frogs, whose harsh interrupted croaking was heard only when I approached the shore, often, I say, was tempted to plunge into the silent lake, that the waters might close over me and my calamities forever. I was restrained when I thought of the heroic and suffering Elizabeth, whom I tenderly loved, whose existence was bound up in mine. I thought also of my father and surviving brother. Should I, by my base desertion, leave them exposed and unprotected to the malice of the fiend whom I had let loose among them? At these moments I wept bitterly, and wished that peace would revisit my mind, only that I might afford them consolation and happiness. That cannot be. Remorse extinguished every hope. I had been the author of unalterable evils, and I lived in daily fear, lest the monster whom I created should perpetrate some new wickedness. I had an obscure feeling that all was not over, and that he would still commit some signal crime, which by its enormity should efface the recollection of the past. There was always a scope for fear, so long as anything I loved remained behind. My abhorrence of this fiend cannot be conceived. When I thought of him, I gnashed my teeth, my eyes became inflamed, and I ardently wished to extinguish that life which I had so thoughtlessly bestowed. When I reflected on his crimes and malice, my hatred and revenge burst all bounds of moderation. I would have made a pilgrimage to the highest peak of Andes, could I, when there, have precipitated him to their base. I wished to see him again, that I might wreak the utmost of abhorrence on his head, and avenge the deaths of William and Justine. Sips. Our house was the house of mourning. My father's health was deeply shaken by the horror of recent events. Elizabeth was sad and desponding. She no longer took delight in her ordinary occupations. All pleasure seemed to her sacrilege towards the dead. A tunnel row in tears, she then thought, was the just tribute she could pay to innocence so blasted and destroyed. She no longer that happy creature who early in youth wandered with me on the banks of the lake and talked with ecstasy of our future prospects. The first of those sorrows the first of those sorrows which are sent to wean us from the earth have visited her, and its dimming influence quenched her dearest smiles. When I reflect, dear cousin, said she, on the miserable death of Justine Moritz, I no longer see the world and its works as they before appeared to me. Before I looked upon accounts of vice and injustice that I read in books or heard from others, as tales of ancient days or imaginary evils. At least they were remote, and more familiar to reason than to the imagination. But now misery has come home, and men appear to me as monsters thirsting for each other's blood. Yet I am certainly unjust. Everybody believed that poor girl to be guilty, and if she could have committed the crime for which she suffered, assuredly she would have been the most depraved of human creatures. For the sake of a few jewels, to have murdered the son of her benefactor and friend, a child whom she had nursed from its birth, and appeared to love as if it had been her own. I cannot consent to the death of any human being, but certainly I should have thought such a creature unfit to remain in the society of men. But she was innocent, I know, I feel she was innocent. You are the same opinion, and that confirms me. Alas, Victor, when falsehood can look so like the truth, who can assure themselves of certain happiness? I feel as if I were talking on the edge. I feel as if I were walking on the edge of a precipice, towards which thousands are crowding and endeavoring to plunge me into the abyss. William and Justine were assassinated, and the murderer escapes. He walks about the world free, and perhaps respected, but even if I were condemned to suffer on the scaffold for the same crimes, I would not change places with such a wretch. I listened to this discourse with the extremest agony. I, not in deed, but in effect, was the true murderer. Elizabeth read my anguish in my countenance, and kindly taking my hand, said, "My dearest friend, you must calm yourself. These events have affected me, God knows how deeply. But I am not so wretched as you are. There's an expression of despair and sometimes revenge in your countenance that makes me tremble. Dear Victor, banish these dark passions. Remember the friends around you who center all their hopes in you. Have we lost power of rendering you happy? While we love, while we are true to each other here in this land of peace and beauty, your native country, we may reap every tranquil blessing. What can disturb our peace?" One giant burn, yeah. They're really putting Elizabeth in this position of pure innocence that she herself has taken on, and she and like that's not necessarily a bad thing. She's not being Mary Sue about it. She is whoever Elizabeth is, or like if she was based on someone, Mary Shelley flipping loved her. Mary Shelley loved this girl. But there is this idea of stress that comes with innocence, I believe. And like, she is putting herself in this like portrait of innocence. And she is like extremely stressed. She knows she's been naive. She knows she's sheltered. She knows that something is going on. But she also knows that she is innocent. And that people around her are innocent. And like her world is breaking down. And that's kind of like what she's going through. That's her character development. Like, she was this eternally beautiful, untouchable character. I think they're trying to, what Mary Shelley's trying to do is trying to turn her into this. Why am I peeking? Okay, there we go. What Mary Shelley is trying to do is that she is trying to, not destroy Elizabeth, but it's like, oh, she's real. She's real now. She has to be real. Victor was still sort of up his own ass, but he's fine. Victor's up his own ass, but he's fine. And could not such words from her, whom I fondly prized for every other gift of fortune, suffice to chase away the fiend that lurked in my heart? Even as she spoke, I drew near to her, as if in terror, lest at that very moment the destroyer had been near to rob me of her. Thus not the tenderness of friendship, nor the beauty of earth, nor of heaven, could redeem my soul from woe. The very accents of love were ineffectual, and I was encompassed by a cloud which no beneficial influence could penetrate. The wounded deer dragging its fainting limbs to some untrodden brake, there to gaze upon the arrow which had pierced it and to die, was but a type of me. Sometimes I could cope with the sullen despair that overwhelmed me, but sometimes the whirlwind of passions of my soul drove me to seek, and by bodily exercise and by change of place, some form of intolerable sensations. It was during an access of this kind I suddenly left my home, and bending my steps towards the near alpine valleys, sought in the magnificence, the eternity of such scenes, to forget myself and my ephemeral, because human, sorrows. My wanderings were directed towards the valley of Chamonix. My wanderings were directed towards the valley of Chamonix. I have visited it frequently during my boyhood. 6 years had passed since then. I was a wreck, but not a change in those savage and enduring scenes. I performed the first part of my journey on horseback. I afterwards hired a mule, as the more sure-footed and least liable to receive injury on these rugged roads. The weather was fine. It was about the middle of the month of August, nearly 2 months after the death of Justine, that miserable epoch from which I had dated all my woe. The weight upon my spirit was sensibly lightened, as I plunged yet deeper in the ravine of Arve. The immense mountains and precipices that overhung me on every side, the sound of the river raging against the rocks, and the dashing of the waterfalls around, spoke of a power mighty as omnipotence, and I ceased to fear or to bend before any being less almighty than that which created and ruled the elements, here displayed in their most terrific guise. Still, as I ascended higher, the valley assumed a more magnificent and astonishing character. Ruined castles hanging on the precipices of piney mountains, the impetuous Arve, and cottages every here and there peeping forth from among the trees, formed a scene of singular beauty. It was augmented and rendered as sublime by the mighty Alps, whose white and shining pyramids and domes towered above all, as belonging to another earth, the habitations of another race of beings. I passed the bridge of Pélissier, The rare ravine, which river forms, opened before me, and I began to ascend the mountain that overhangs it. Soon after I entered the valley of Chamonix. This valley is more wonderful and sublime, but not so beautiful and picturesque as that of Servox, through which I had just passed. The high and snowy mountains were its immediate boundaries, but I saw no more ruined castles and fertile fields. Immense glaciers approached the road. I heard the rumbling thunder of the falling avalanche, and marked the smoke of its passage. Mont Blanc, the supreme and magnificent. Mont Blanc, raised itself from surrounding aiguilles, and its tremendous dome overlooked the valley. Some of these have accent marks, which I'm not familiar with, so if you hear me say something weird, it's because I'm trying. A tingling, long-lost sense of pleasure often came across me this journey. Some turn in the road, some new objects suddenly perceived and recognized reminded me of days gone by, and were associated with the light-hearted gaiety of my boyhood. The very winds whispered in soothing accents, and maternal nature bade me weep no more. Then again, the kindly influence ceased to act. I found myself fettered again to grief, indulging in all misery of reflection. Then I spurred on my animal, striving so to forget the world, my fears, and more than all, myself. Or in a more desperate fashion I alighted, and threw myself on the grass, weighed down by horror and despair. At length I arrived at the village of Chamonix. Exhaustion succeeded to the extreme fatigue of both body and mind which I had endured. For a short space of time I remained at the window, watching the pallid lightnings that played above Mont Blanc, and listening to the rushing of the Arve, which pursued its noisy wave beneath. The same lulling sounds acted as a lullaby to my too keen sensations. When I placed my head upon the pillow, sleep crept over me. I felt it as it came, and blessed the giver of oblivion. So that was chapter 9. He's basically trying to deal with his guilt. That was just basically the guilt episode. That was the I'm going to go to the mountains to convalesce. It's like, I'm going to ignore my family for a day. Hold up, I'm going to have a depression nap. I'm going to go have a depression nap in the mountains. Please excuse me. But on to chapter 10. Let me have a sip. Have sippies. We're going on to 11 tonight. Let me check something. Let's see here. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Just checking something, chat. So, we're going to be going until 11. Which I know, so weird. I normally only read for 2 hours. But, these are some chunky boys. Some chunky chapters. So, chapter 10. I spent the following day roaming... Sorry, I literally just inhaled my microphone. It was like... long streams, hell yeah. 3 hour reading. Though some of this is mostly me gushing over. Oh, thank you for the hydrate. Thank you. Okay. I spent the following day roaming the valley. I stood beside the sources of the Aviaran, which take their rise in a glacier, with that slow pace is advancing down from the summit of the hills to barricade the valley. The abrupt sides of the vast mountains were before me. The icy wall of the glacier overhung me. A few shattered pines were scattered around. The solemn silence of this glorious presence chamber of imperial nature is broken only by the brawling waves, or the fall of some vast fragment, the thunder sound of the avalanche, or the cracking, reverberated mountains of the accumulated ice, which through the silent working of immutable laws was ever and anon rent and torn, as if it had been but a plaything in their hands. These sublime and magnificent scenes afforded me the greatest consolation that I was capable of receiving. They elevated me from all littleness of feeling, and although they did not remove my grief, they subdued and tranquilized it. In some degree, they also diverted my mind from the thoughts over which had brooded for the last month. I retired to rest at night, my slumbers, as it were, waited on and administrated by the assemblance of grand shapes which I had contemplated during the day. They congregated around me, the unstained snowy mountaintop, the glittering pinnacle, the pine woods, and the ragged bare ravine, the eagle soaring amidst the clouds. They all gathered around me and bade me be at peace. When they had fled the next morning, hold on. Where had they fled the next morning when I awoke? All the soul-inspiriting fled with sleep, and dark melancholy clouded every thought. The rain was pouring in torrents, and thick mists hid the summits of the mountains, so that even I saw not the faces of those mighty friends. Still, I would penetrate their misty veil, and seek them in their cloudy retreats. What were rain and storm to me? My mule was brought to the door, and I resolved to ascend the summit of Mountain Ver. I remember the effect that the view of the tremendous and ever-moving glacier had produced upon my mind when I first saw it. It had filled me with a sublime ecstasy that gave wings to the soul, allowed it to soar from the obscure world to light and joy. The sight of the awful and majestic in nature had always the effect of solemnizing my mind, and causing me to forget the cares of life. I determined to go without a guide, for I was well acquainted with the path. The presence of another would destroy the solitary grandeur of the scene. Imagine being the poor donkey, the poor mule, that has to go out in the rain because someone has depression. Imagine being that donkey. That donkey has to go out in the rain, has to be ridden through the fog. But it doesn't matter if he knows the path. The donkey has to be scared for its life. Excuse me? You're risking my life to cure your depression? Does that sound right? The ascent is precipitous, but the path is cut into continual and short windings, which enable you to surmount the perpendicularity of the mountain. I will learn to enunciate. It is seen terrifically desolate. In 1,000 spots the traces of winter avalanche may be perceived, where trees lie broken and strewed on the ground, some entirely destroyed, others bent, leaning upon the jutting rocks of the mountain, or traversably upon other trees. The path, as you ascend higher, is intersected by ravines of snow, down which stones continually roll from above. One of them is particularly dangerous, as the slightest sound, such as even speaking in a loud voice, produces a concussion of air sufficient to draw destruction upon the head of the speaker. The pines are not tall or luxuriant, but they are somber, and add an air of severity to the scene. I looked on to the valley beneath. Vast mists were rising from rivers which ran through it, and curling in thick wreaths around the opposite mountains, whose summits were hid in uniform clouds, while rain poured from the dark sky, and added to the melancholy impression I received from the objects around me. Alas, why does man boast of sensibilities superior to those apparent in the brute? It only renders them more necessary beings. If our impulses were confined to hunger, thirst, and desire, we might nearly be free, but now we are moved by every wind that blows, and a chance word or scene that that word may convey to us. And I got a poem. I got a poem here. We rest. A dream has power to poison sleep. We rise, one wandering thought flutes the day. We feel, conceive, or reason, laugh or weep, embrace fond woe, or cast our cares away. It is the same, for, be it joy or sorrow, the path of its departure is still free. Man's yesterday may never be like his morrow, naught may endure it but mutability. It is nearly noon when I arrived at the top of the ascent. For some time I sat upon the rock that overlooks the sea of ice. A mist covered both that and the surrounding mountains. Presently a breeze dissipated the cloud, and I descended upon the glacier. The surface is very uneven, rising like the waves of a troubled sea, descending low and interspersed by rifts that sink deep. The field of ice is almost a league in width, but I spent nearly 2 hours in crossing it. The opposite mountains is a bare perpendicular rock. From the side where I now stood, Montever was exactly opposite, at the distance of a league, and above it rose Mont Blanc. In its awful majesty, I remained in a recess of the rock, gazing on this wonderful and stupendous scene. The scene, or rather the vast river of ice wound among its dependent mountains, whose aerial summits hung over its recesses. Their icy and glittering peaks shone in sunlight over the clouds. My heart, which was before sorrowful, now swelled with something like joy. I exclaimed, "Wondering spirit, if indeed ye wonder, and do not rest in your narrow beds, allow me this faint happiness, or take me as your companion, away from the joys of life." As I said this, I suddenly beheld the figure of a man at some distance, advancing towards me with superhuman speed. He bounded over the crevices and ice among which I had walked with caution. His stature, as he approached, seemed to exceed that of a man. I was troubled, a mist came over my eyes, and I felt a faintness seize me, but I was quickly restored by the cold gale of the mountains. I perceived, as the sheep came nearer, a sight tremendous and abhorred. That was the wretch whom I had created. I trembled with rage and horror, resolving to wait his approach, and then came close with him in mortal combat. He approached, his countenance bespoke bitter anguish, combined with disdain and malignity, while its unearthly ugliness rendered it almost too horrible for human eyes. But I scarcely observed this. Rage and hatred had at first deprived me of utterance, and I recovered only to overwhelm him with words of expressive furious detestation. And I recovered only to overwhelm him with words expressive of furious detestation and contempt. "Devil!" I exclaimed. "Do you dare approach me, and do you not fear the fierce vengeance of my arm wreaked upon your miserable head? Begone, vile insect, or rather stay, that I may trample you to dust. And oh, that I could, with extinction of your miserable existence, restore those victims whom you have so diabolically murdered." "I expected this reception," said the demon. All men hate the wretched. How then must I be hated, who am miserable beyond all living things? Yet you, my creator, detest and spurn me, thy creature, to whom art thou bound by ties only dissoluble by the annihilation of one of us? Your purpose to kill me. How dare you sport thus with life? Do your duty towards me, and I will do mine towards you and the rest of mankind. If you will comply with my conditions, I will leave them and you at peace. But if you refuse, I will glut the maw of death until it is satiated with the blood of your remaining friends. Abhorred monster, fiend that thou art, the tortures of hell are too mild a vengeance for thy crimes. Wretched devil, you reproach me with your creation. Come on then, that I may extinguish the spark which I so negligently bestowed. My rage was without bounds. I sprang on him, impelled by all feelings which can arm one being with the existence of an... Hold on. My rage was without bounds. I sprang on him, impelled by all the feelings which can arm one being against the existence of another. He easily eluded me and said, "Be calm. I entreat you to hear me before you give vent to your hatred on my devoted head. Have I not suffered enough that you seek to increase my misery? Life, although it may be an accumulation of anguish, is dear to me, and I will defend it. Remember, thou hast made me more powerful than thyself. My height is superior to thine, my joints more supple. I will not be tempted to set myself in opposition to thee. I am thy creature. I will even be mild and docile to my natural lord and king, if thou wilt also perform thy part, which thou owest me. O Frankenstein, be not equable to every other, and trample upon me alone, to whom thy justice and even thy clemency and affection is most due. Remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss, from which I alone am irrevocably excluded. I was benevolent and good. Misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. Be gone. I will not hear from you. There can be no community between you and me. We are enemies. Be gone, or let our strength in a fight, be gone, or let us try our strength in a fight, in which one must fall. How can I move thee? Will no entreaties cause thee to turn a favorable eye upon thy creature, who employs thy goodness and compassion? Believe me, Frankenstein, I was benevolent. My soul glowed with love and humanity. I am not alone, miserably alone. You, my creator, abhor me. What hope can I gather from your fellow creatures who owe me nothing? They spurn and hate me. The desert mountains and dreary glaciers are my refuge. I have wandered here for many days. The caves of ice, which only I do not fear, are a dwelling to me, the only one which man does not grudge. These bleak skies I hail, for they are kinder to me than your fellow beings. If the multitude of mankind knew of my existence, they would do as you do, and arm themselves for my destruction. Shall I not then hate them who abhor me? I will keep no terms with my enemies. I am miserable, and they shall share my wretchedness. Yet it is in your power to recompense me, and deliver them from an evil which it only remains for you to make so great, that not only you and your family, but thousands of others shall be swallowed up in the whirlwinds of its rage. Let your compassion be moved, and do not disdain me. Listen to my tale. When you have heard that, abandon or commiserate me, as you shall judge that I deserve. But hear me, The guilty are allowed, by human laws, bloody as they are, to speak in their own defense before they are condemned. Listen to me, Frankenstein. You accuse me of murder, yet you would, with a satisfied conscience, destroy your own creatures. Oh, praise the eternal justice of man, yet I ask you not to spare me. Listen to me, and then, if you can, and if you will, destroy the work of your hands. Why do you call to my remembrance? I rejoined. Circumstances of which I shudder to reflect that I have been miserable upon. Circumstances of which I shudder to reflect that I have been the miserable origin and author. Cursed be the day, abhorred devil, in which you saw first light, although I curse myself. Be the hands that formed you. You have made me wretched beyond expression. You have left me no power to consider whether I am just to you or not. Begone, relieve me from the sight of your detested form. I will remark on that when because we're almost finished. We only have 2 paragraphs. Thus I relieve thee, my creator, he said, and placed his hated hands before my eyes, which I flung from me with violence. Thus I take from thee a sight which you abhor. Still, thou canst listen to me, and grant me thy compassion. By the virtues I once possessed, I demand this from you. Hear my tale. It is long and strange, and the temperature of this place is not fitting to your fine sensations. Come to the hut upon the mountain. The sun is yet high in the heavens, before it descends to hide itself behind yon snowy precipices, and illuminate another world. You will have heard my story, and you can decide. On you it rests whether I quit forever the neighborhood of man and lead a harmless life, or become the scourge of your fellow creatures and the author of your own speedy ruin. As he said this, he led the way across the ice. I followed. My heart was full, and I did not answer him. As I proceeded, I weighed the various arguments that he had used and determined at least to listen to his tale. I was partly urged by my curiosity, and compassion confirmed my resolution. I had hitherto supposed him to be the murderer of my brother, and I eagerly sought a confirmation or denial of this opinion. For the first time also, I felt what the duties of a creator towards his creature were, and that I ought to render him happy before I complained of his wickedness. These motives urged me to comply with his demand. We crossed the ice, therefore, and ascended the opposite rock. The air was cold, and the rain again began to descend. We entered the hut, the fiend with an air of exultation, I with a heavy heart and depressed spirits. But I consented to listen, and seeing myself by the fire which my odious companion had lighted, and he thus began his tale. So yeah, Frankenstein's monster is being super emo. Though again, like we discussed earlier, it's kind of hard to have a stretch. Thank you for the stretch. Gotta work the shoulder blades. Oh, that's good. Oh, that's good. Since we're just between chapters, yeah. Frankenstein's monster is coming off a bit emo, but if you're killing people, you're probably somewhere there. Dad, nobody understands me. To be fair, I will put some of that blame on Frankenstein because he did not teach the creature about society. He did not teach the creature about society. But also, the creature didn't go and decide to murder people. It was like, people hate me. I'm going to murder them. Like we know, like I'm pretty sure he just admitted to killing William. And because of William's death, Justine was thus killed, so he was thus yeah. Justine was killed through William being this William was a vehicle for Justine's death, basically. I murder people because people are so mean to me. I'll convince him to like you. Listen, there are a lot of serial killers who have a fandom, so maybe he has a point. Not that he has a good point, but he might have a point. Some killers have fandoms. Some good serial killer content. Hey, listen, I made another dead body. No one cared until I put on the mask. Listen, murder is content for some people. No one cared until I put on the mask. Exactly. No one cared until I began to be mean. I remember hearing about serial killers getting fan mail in prison. Yup. Serial killers, cult leaders. Though to be fair, it's because most serial killers have a charisma about them. Same thing for cult leaders, so it's more of human nature reacting to attractive traits. Though that's because some people's human natures aren't held in flipping check. Like, those people also have something wrong with them. It's like, let's be real. The murderers have something wrong with them. But the people sending mail to them also have something wrong with them. There's not like a normal person sending mail to serial killers in prison. And I think like the entire backstory of Harley Quinn was that she was like kind of Stockholm syndrome because she kept constantly visiting Joker. I think she was Joker's therapist. And like that's like her entire deal. I can't wait for the Joker 2, by the way. It's like she was his therapist and she fell in love with him because she probably has also something wrong with her. Though if you're a therapist, you're probably not sane either, to be frank. Yeah, he seduced her. But like what we have here is everyone hates me. You didn't raise me. I want my revenge. But first, I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to tell you my story. We got Titus here, Frankenstein's Titus from Final Fantasy X. Let me tell you a story. And that framing device. But so the next chapter the next few chapters are probably going to be entirely in the monster's viewpoint. Yeah, from what I'm seeing, everything's in quotation marks. Everything's in quotation marks. So imagine, and this is weird because the story's already being told in past tense. So we're getting a story within a story within a story. Like we are in storyception. We are in storyception. But on to chapter 11. This will probably be the last chapter of the night. Then I will, then we will call it, and let's see here. hopefully we can find someone to raid that makes sense tonight. Unlikely. But, we'll find someone. Hold up. Go home. Go to my watch phone. Okay, yeah, there might be someone. Yeah. Oh, we got... Okay, yeah. It's like Hard Darkness. It's how it's like a story being told to others. Yeah. Yeah, it's a story within a story, and it's like... Though I'm surprised I'm surprised Mary Shelley didn't go with, like, unreliable narrator at some point, though. Though, to be frank, there could be, like, an unreliable narrator kind of deal going on. I think they even said that directly at the beginning, that Frankenstein was going to be unreliable. And not to mention, we're seeing most of this through his eyes, so he's biased. We don't really know what happened, though I think everyone's going to be dead at the end of this. Like if anyone survives, I'm going to be surprised. Let me go, get some more water, chat. Let me just go get some more water. I'll be right back. I'm back. Did y'all miss me? Y'all better miss me. Okay. Okay, chapter 11. This will be our last chapter for the night, I believe. It is with considerable difficulty that I remember the original era of my being. Thank you. All events of that period appear confused and indistinct. Remember where this is the monster talking. We're now with the monster. A strange multiplicity of sensations seized me, and I saw, felt, heard, and smelt at the same time. It was indeed a long time before I learned to distinguish between operations of my various senses. By degrees, I remember a stronger light pressed on upon my nerves, so that I was obliged to shut my eyes. Darkness then came over me and troubled me, but hardly had I felt this when, opening my eyes, as I now suppose, the light poured upon me again. I walked, and I believe descended. I presently found a great alteration in my sensations. Before, dark and opaque bars had surrounded me, impervious to my touch or sight. I now found I could wander on at liberty, with no obstacles in which I could not either surmount or avoid. The light became more and more oppressive to me, the heat wearing me as I walked. I sought a place where I could receive shade. This was the forest near Ingolstadt, and here I lay by the side of the brook, resting from my fatigue, until I felt tormented by hunger and thirst. This roused me from my nearly dormant state, and I ate some berries which I found hanging on the trees or lying on the ground. I slaked my thirst at the brook, and then, lying down, was overcome by sleep. It was dark when I awoke. I felt also, and half frightened. I felt cold and also half frightened, as if it was instinctively finding myself so desolate. Before I had quitted your apartment on a sensation of cold, I had covered myself with some clothes, but these were insufficient to secure me from the dews of night. I was poor. I was a poor, helpless, miserable wretch. I knew I could extinguish nothing, but feeling pain invade me on all sides, I sat down and wept. Soon, a gentle light stole over the heavens and gave me a sensation of pleasure. I started up and beheld a radiant form rise among the trees. I gazed with a kind of wonder. It moved slowly, but it enlightened my path, and I again went in search of berries. I was still cold when under one of the trees I found a huge cloak, with which I covered myself, and sat down upon the ground. No distinct no distinct ideas occupied my head. All was confused. I felt light, and hunger, and thirst, and darkness. Innumerable sounds rang in my ears. And on all sides, various scents saluted me. The only object I could distinguish was the bright moon, and I fixed my eyes on that with pleasure. Several changes of day and night passed, and the orb of night had greatly lessened. When I began to distinguish my sensations from each other, I gradually saw plainly the clear stream that supplied me with drink, and the trees that shaded me with their foliage. I was delighted when I first discovered that pleasant sound which often saluted my ears proceeded from the throats of the little winged animals, and often intercepted the light from my eyes. I began also to observe, with greater accuracy, the forms that surrounded me, and to perceive the boundaries of the radiant roof of life which canopied me. Sometimes I tried to imitate the pleasant songs of the birds, but was unable. Sometimes I wished to express my sensations in my own mode, but the uncouth and inarticulate sounds which broke from me frightened me into silence again. The moon had disappeared from the night, and again, with a lessened form, showed itself while I still remained in the forest. My sensations had by this time become distinct, and my mind received every day additional ideas. My eyes became accustomed to the light and to perceive objects in their right forms. I distinguished the insect from the herb, and by degrees one herb from another. I found that the sparrow uttered none but harsh notes, whilst those of the blackbird and the thrush were sweet and enticing. One day, when I was oppressed by the cold, I found a fire which had been left by some wandering beggars. I was overcome with delight at the warmth I experienced from it. In my joy, I thrust my hand into the live embers, but quickly drew it out again with a cry of pain. How strange, I thought, that the same cause would produce such opposite effects. I examined the materials of the fire, and in my joy I found it to be composed of wood. I quickly collected some branches, but they were wet and would not burn. I was pained at this, and sat still watching the operation of the fire. The wet wood which I had placed near the heat dried, and itself became inflamed. I reflected on this, and by touching the various branches, I discovered the cause, and busied myself in collecting a great quantity of wood, that I might dry it and have a plentiful supply of fire. When night came on, and brought sleep with it, I was in the greatest fear lest my fire should be extinguished. I covered it carefully with dry wood and leaves, and placed wet branches upon it, and then, spreading my cloak, I lay upon the ground, and sunk into sleep. It was morning when I awoke, and my first care was to visit the fire. I uncovered it, and a gentle breeze quickly fanned it into a flame. I observed this also, and contrived a fan of branches, which roused the embers when they were nearly extinguished. When night came again, I found, with pleasure, the fire gave light as well as heat, and that the discovery of this element was useful to me in my food. For I had found some of the offals that the travelers had left had been roasted, and tasted more savory than the berries that I gathered from the trees. I tried to dress my food in the same manner, placing it on the live embers. I found that the berries were spoiled by this operation, and the nuts and roots much improved. Food, however, became scarce, and I often spent the whole day searching in vain for a few acorns to assuage the pangs. It's late. It's late, and my voice is leaving me. My enunciation is leaving me. Food, however, became scarce, and I often spent the whole day searching in vain for a few acorns to assuage the pangs of hunger. When I found this, I resolved to quit the place that I had hitherto inhabited, to seek for one where a few wants I experienced would be more easily satisfied. In this emigration, I exceedingly lamented the loss of the fire which I obtained through the accident, and knew not how to reproduce it. I gave several hours to the serious consideration of this difficulty. I was obliged to relinquish all attempt to supply it. Wrapping myself up in my cloak, I struck across the wood towards the setting sun. I passed 3 days in these rambles, and at length discovered the open country. A great fall of snow had taken place the night before, and the fields were of one uniform white. The appearance was disconsolate, and I found my feet chilled by the cold, damp substance that covered the ground. Hydrate, hydrate. It's fine. The assuage the pangs of hunger was just a whole phrase I was not ready for. Okay. I was about to skip a whole paragraph, oh my god. It's about 7 in the morning, and I longed to obtain food and shelter. At length, I perceived a small hut on rising ground, which had doubtless been built for the convenience of some shepherd. This was a new sight to me, and I examined the structure with great curiosity. Finding the door open, I entered. An old man sat in it near a fire, over which he was preparing breakfast. He turned on hearing a noise, and perceiving me, shrieked loudly, and quitting the hut, ran across the fields with a speed of which his debilitated form hardly appeared capable. His appearance different from any I had ever before seen. His flight somewhat surprised me, but I was enchanted by the appearance of the hut. Here the snow and rain could not penetrate. The ground was dry, and it presented to me then an exquisite and divine retreat as pandemonium appeared to the demons of hell after their sufferings in the lake of fire. I greedily devoured the remnants of the shepherd's breakfast, which consisted of bread, cheese, milk, and wine. The latter, however, I did not like. Then, overcome by fatigue, I lay down among some straw and fell asleep. It was noon when I awoke, and allured by the warmth of the sun which shone brightly on the white ground, I determined to recommence my travels, and depositing the remains of the peasant's breakfast in a wallet I found, I proceeded across the fields for several hours. Until sunset I arrived at a village. How miraculous did this appear! The huts, neither cottages... I just said colleges, oh no. The needed cottages and stately houses engaged my admiration by turns. The vegetables in the gardens and the milk and cheese that I saw placed at the windows of some of the cottages allured my appetite. One of the best of these I entered. I hardly placed my foot within the door when the children shrieked, and one of the women fainted. The whole village was roused. Some fled, some attacked me, until grievously bruised by stones, many other kinds of missile weapons, I escaped to the open country, and fearfully took refuge in a low hovel, quite bare, and making a wretched appearance after the houses I beheld in the village. This hovel, however, joined a cottage of a neat and pleasant appearance. After my late dearly bought experience, I dared not enter it. My place of refuge was constructed of wood, but so low that I could not but, but so low that I could with difficulty sit upright in it. No wood, however, was placed on the earth which formed the floor, but was dry, and although the wind entered it by innumerable chinks, I found it an agreeable asylum from the snow and ruin. They gotta go get their bachelor's degrees. Exactly. The bachelor degrees of making cheese wine, and bread. And I could go for like a breakfast like that. That sounds like a good breakfast now that I think about it. Cheese, bread, milk. Very dairy. Lots of dairy. But I like dairy. Here then I retreated and lay down happy. Here then I retreated and lay down happy to have found a shelter, however miserable, from the inclemency of the season, and still more from the barbarity of man. As soon as morning dawned, I crept from my kennel that I might view the adjacent cottage and discover if I could remain in the habitation I had found. It was situated against the back of the cottage, and surrounded on the sides, which were exposed by a pigsty and a clear pool of water. One part was open, and by that I had crept in, but now I covered every crevasse which I might be perceived with stones and wood, yet in such a manner that I might move them on occasion to pass out. All the light I enjoyed came through the sty, and that was sufficient for me. Having thus arranged my dwelling, and carpeted it with clean straw, I retired, for I saw the figure of a man at a distance. I remember too well my treatment the night before to trust myself in his power. I had first, however, provided my sustenance for that day by a loaf of coarse bread, which I purloined, and a cup with which I could drink more conveniently than from my hand, of the pure water which flowed from my retreat. The floor was a little raised, so that kept it perfectly dry. By its vicinity to the chimney of the cottage, it was tolerably warm. Being thus provided, I resolved to reside in this hovel until something should occur which might alter my determination. It was indeed a paradise compared to the bleak forest, my former residence. The rain-dropping branches, the dank earth. I ate my breakfast with pleasure. I was about to remove a plank to procure myself a little water, when I heard a step, and looking through a small chink, I beheld a young creature with a pail on her head passing before my hovel. The girl was young and of gentle demeanor, unlike what I have found cottagers and farmhouse servants to be. Yet she was meanly dressed by a coarse blue petticoat, and a linen jacket being her only garb. Her fair hair was plaited, but not adorned. She looked patient, yet sad. I lost sight of her, and in about a quarter of an hour she returned, bearing the pail, which was now partly filled with milk. As she walked along, seemingly incommoded by the burden, a young man met her, whose countenance expressed a deeper despondence. Uttering a few sounds with an air of melancholy, he took the pail from her head and bore it to the cottage himself. She followed, and they disappeared. Presently I saw the young man again, with some tools in hand, cross the field behind the cottage. The girl was also busied, sometimes in the house and sometimes in the yard. Man, a woman can't do anything without being bothered by a man. Damn, just let a girl get a pail of milk. On examining my dwelling, I found that one of the windows of the cottage had formerly occupied a part of it, but the panes had been filled up with wood. In one of these was a small and almost imperceptible... Oh, hold on. I just read that. Okay, hold up. No, wait. Yeah. No, wait. Yeah, never mind. Okay, yeah, never mind. On examining my dwelling, I found that one of the windows of the cottage had formerly occupied a part of it. panes had been filled up with wood, and one of these was a small and almost imperceptible chink which the eye could penetrate. Through this crevice... Oh my god, it's a lot. Through this crevice, a small room was visible, whitewashed and clean, but very bare of furniture. In one corner, near a small fire, sat the old man, leaning his head on his hands in a disconsolate attitude. The young girl was occupied in arranging the cottage, but presently she took something out of a drawer which employed her hands, and she sat down beside the old man, who, taking up an instrument, began to play, and produced sounds sweeter than the voice of the thrush or the nightingale. It is a lovely sight even to me, poor wretch, I never beheld aught beautiful before. The silver hair and benevolent countenance of the aged cottager won my reverence, while gentle manners of the girl enticed my love. He played a sweet mournful air, which I perceived drew tears from the eyes of his amiable companion, of which the old man took no notice, until she sobbed audibly. He then pronounced a few sounds, and the fair creature, leaving her work, knelt at his feet. He raised her, and smiled with such kindness and affection, that I felt sensations of peculiar and overpowering nature. They were a mixture of pain and pleasure, such as I had never before experienced, either from hunger or cold, warmth or food, and I withdrew from the window, unable to bear these emotions. Soon after, the young man entered, bearing on his shoulders a load of wood. The girl met him at the door, helped him to relieve him of his burden, and taking some of the fuel into the cottage, placed it on the fire. Then she and the youth went apart into a nook of the cottage, and he showed her a large loaf and a piece of cheese. She seemed pleased, and then went to the garden for some roots and plants, which she placed in water and then upon the fire. She afterwards continued her work, whilst the young man went into the garden and appeared busily employed digging and pulling up roots. After he had been employed thus about an hour, the young woman joined him, and they entered the cottage together. The old man, in the meantime, had been pensive, but on the appearance of his Dear gods, give me the ability to enunciate the rest of this chapter. The old man, in the meantime, been pensive, but on the appearance of his companions, he assumed a more cheerful air, and they sat down to eat. The meal was quickly dispatched, the young woman again occupied in arranging of the cottage. The old man walked before the cottage in the sun for a few minutes, leaning on the arm of the youth. Nothing could exceed in beauty the contrast between these two excellent creatures. One was old, with silver hairs and a countenance beaming with benevolence and love. The younger was slight and graceful in his figure. His features were molded with the finest symmetry, and his eyes and attitude expressed utmost sadness and despondency. The old man returned to the cottage, and the youth, with tools different from those he had used in the morning, directed his steps across the fields. Not quickly shut in, but to my extreme wonder I found the cottagers had means of prolonging the light by use of tapers, and was delighted to find the setting of the sun did not put an end to the pleasure I experienced in watching my human neighbors. In the evening, the young girl and her companion were employed in various occupations which I did not understand. The old man again took the instrument which produced divine sounds and had enchanted me in the morning. So soon had he finished, the youth began, not to play, but to utter sounds that were monotonous, neither resembling the harmony of the old man's instruments, nor the songs of the birds. I since found that he read aloud, but at the time I knew nothing of the science of words or letters. The family, after having been thus occupied for a short time, extinguished their lights and retired, and I, and as I conjectured, twist. Okay, so I said that was the last chapter, and I mean it. Last chapter for now. But let's talk a little bit. So this is Tamagotchi. Tamagotchi. Stretch. Stretch. Stretch and drink. Don't worry, I'm still stretching, Will. Tamagotchi. So, this is the first family our monster has met. Well, not the first family he's met, but it's how he's learning about a human culture. So he's learning about music, but also language, and also how the family interacts. I'm not sure if the girl and the boy are brother and sister, or if they're lovers. I think it could be either or. It could be either or. It's only been like one day. knowing Mary Shelley, they might be both. Mary Shelley be like that, you know? Oh, since we're not, I don't need this. Okay, I have to remember chapter 12. We're on chapter 12. And I will actually turn up our regular ambient music. Come on. Okay, here we go. But, Tamagotchi, I still want to stretch. It's addicting now. But, this is probably where he learns how to talk, and how he gets interested in, human life, even though, his first interaction was kind of piss poor at best. Like being chased away from a village is kind of traumatic. It's very traumatic. But I'm wanting to see where this goes. I think we all know where this is heading, cause you don't become cruel enough to kill a child by just having sort of bad things happen to you. You don't just kill a child out of revenge and spite by only being mildly inconvenienced by life. I mean, he has enough trauma, but he's gonna get more. But like I said earlier, it's in more modern readings, Frankenstein is not as... the monster is not as, pitiable. Still relatable, but not as, like, pitiable. Mary Shelley wanted the Oh. Is my mic off? Is my mic off? Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Properties? Oh. Okay, okay. Okay. Okay, Caitlin can hear me. Okay. Okay, so it's not my issue. It's not my issue. Okay. Mary Shelley wanted Frankenstein to have its canon event. Okay, good. But yes, Mary Shelley wanted Frankenstein to have his canon event. That is what that means, right? I'm kind of old. I'm 29. As far as anyone knows, I'm 29. That's what canon event means. It means something horrible, right? something horrible to establish the character. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, Mary Shelley was like, I know what I'm going to do. I know exactly what I'm going to do. Mary Shelley went and said, I'm going to kill everyone. Okay, yeah, that's what I figured. So yeah, Mary Shelley went and said, I'm going to give him a canon event. Thank you, Nightbot. Remember, y'all, go get yourself a snack or a drink or whatever. So, we are at chapter 12, and now we're listening to we are Frankenstein, listening to our child recount its canon event. That's where we are. We are the father of Shinji, but only Shinji was a horrible murderer. Only Shinji was a horrible murderer. I hate you, Dad. Now let me tell you my life story. Exactly. Exactly. I hate you, Dad. Let me recount how horrible my life is. Yeah. But I am liking this, though. Though, again, if this was modern, it probably would not be a story within a story within a story. That is where I feel. God, that is emo. Yeah. Emo isn't new, it just has new aesthetics. Emo isn't new, it just has a new look. But if this was a more modern story, not to say that it isn't modern, by all accounts, by a lot of accounts, this is somewhat recent in terms of literature. It's somewhat recent. Like, when was this written? I know I looked this up the other day. Actually, no, it should be in my, it should be in the book. 1831? 1831. I mean, 200 years. Relatively recent. Considering the actual age of the human race. Considering when the Epic of Gilgamesh was released, you know? Relatively recent. Only 200 years. Only 200 years. I know some VTubers older than that. Or they claim to be older than that. But let's be real, some of them aren't. Some of them are still in that immature 100-year range. They're just pretending to be 200 for the likes. But, relatively, yeah. But, like, everything you see nowadays is like, there's some old. Imagine Gilgamesh has a modern YA novel. Why hasn't Rick Riordan gone onto that? Why hasn't he gone onto that? He needs to get on that. Ricky. Hey Mickey, you write so fine. Why don't you blow my mind? He has. Of course he has. Okay, I was on chapter... Yeah, we're on chapter 12. Well, one of his imprint people. Yeah, probably. It's probably somewhere. I need the Yander Ishtar. I need Rick Riordan and Yander Ishtar, please. Okay, but like, yeah. Yeah, that's how I'm like feeling about it, is like the what was I even saying? Oh my god. Talking like an adaptation of the Lil story. Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is in a high school. Gilgamesh is in a high school and it's 2009. Oh god, 2009 high school. Even better. Even more like in between the times. The late O's were a time. Ooh, and and the soundtrack would have to have Lady Gaga and Katy Perry in it if it's 2009. oh no, I'm having like flashbacks. I'm having war flashbacks. I'm having like old songs enter my head. Like, oh my god. I'm having old songs and it's like, oh no. Oh no, I'm having feelings. I'm not allowed to have feelings. There's actually an anime called Gilgamesh, but oh my god, it's the worst thing I've watched ever. I've watched decent animes. I've watched animes that could be considered subjectively bad or subjectively good. Gilgamesh is bad. It kind of feels like you could have taken all of the mythological elements out and just renamed them all. It feels like Gilgamesh isn't even that important to the story. It's just kind of there. Like, I'm pretty sure if they made it original, it may have actually even been better. But nothing saving Gilgamesh. Nothing was saving that anime. The actual incest in that anime is too strong for it to be saved. The incest and then the brother's jealousy of his sister getting pregnant with another man is just too much. It's just too much. Gilgamesh is good to watch if you're going to make fun of it. But not much else. Not to mention all the like 20, 30 something year old woman kissing a teenage boy. It's not portrayed as a good thing, but she's drunk and kissing a teenage boy because he looks like his father, who she had a thing for. It's Gilgamesh is a whole issue that I could get into. But I would actually like to see a more modern interpretation of Frankenstein. Because, like, you know, the story within a story deal is still kind of popular, but I don't think it would, like, it's not a modern thing. That's not a modern writing style. I'd see an interpretation of Frankenstein where we'd probably like see everything happening as it's happening, like bouncing back and forth between the monster and Frankenstein. Because like there was basically 2 years where Victor was just flipping in bed, being an ill boy, being taken care of by his boy toy. We could have used that time to focus on the monster, which I think like a way to do it today would be to flip focus. But like I said, I don't think the monster would be considered sympathetic nowadays. Like he's sympathetic, but I don't know. If William was portrayed as annoying, yeah, that child deserves to get it, but they're putting William on the innocent child pedestal. So it's like he doesn't deserve to die. Though he was annoying for his mom's drool, so maybe. Too pure for this earthly world, exactly. Like, like if, like if there was like a movie, like a modern Frankenstein movie, William would be in an all-white outfit at one point. His death would be in an all-white outfit. Cause that's how I would do it. That's how I would do it. I listen. What you dress the actors in is just as important as like the setting. Like clothes can tell a story too. Like there's a he'd be like Tiny Tim and Christmas Carol exactly. Like like I have like read like I have watched like film critics and like I watched like an entire like a video essay on the fashion of Effie in the Hunger Games series, and they basically were like, this is how her fashion tells the story, tells her personal story and her personality growth over Hunger Games. And like how she wore makeup and how her 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 wardrobe and what she actually wore changed. Yes, it's great. I'm not really interested in Hunger Games. I'm interested in Effie. I'm interested in Effie Trinket as an aesthetic. I'm not actually interested in Hunger Games in any other way, shape, or form. Except for the memes. I volunteer as tribute. But like how like Effie dressed and how her story was told through her clothes. That is something like every wardrobe artist should like aspire to, is telling a story through clothes. And like I was watching another video essay. Though it's more like video essay slash meme because he was more like dunking on Christian movies. Because there's a Christian movie it was about. But it was like a Christian movie about the rapture. As you know. And like for the rapture, and for like an apocalypse, and for like a flash forward 3 weeks after the apocalypse, no one looked like they weren't experiencing a rapture. Everything was working fine. Everyone still had perfectly curled hair. What's going on with this rapture? Nothing's happening. Though spoilers for a movie that nobody's going to watch. Well, not a movie. It wasn't a movie. It was a series. It was a series based on the rapture, a short mini-series. And by mini-series, I mean each episode is 5 minutes long, apparently. No, it was not Left Behind. Hold up. Hold up. Let me bring up the YouTube. Because I just watched it before I before I started the stream. Okay, history. No. Teen horror. Okay, it was, oh, what is this? Pull up the old tube, yep. Okay, is it called The End? Hold up, let me just double check. I believe it's called The End. And Pureflix. Oh, did y'all know there's a Christian version of Netflix called Pureflix? Yeah. Yes, it's called The End. And to spoil it, the entire rapture was a dream sequence by this girl, because God wanted to scare her into being nicer. That's it. That's the ending. I just saved you so much time that you weren't gonna waste anyway. But, like, nobody in this apocalypse looked like they were in an apocalypse. And, like, he kept mentioning that. It's like, everyone has such good makeup and, like, good clothes. And, like, to be fair, there is an actual, from what I read and from what I've heard from other sources, there are actually apocalypse guidelines set up by the government in case apocalyptic level events do happen. Yeah, but I do feel like there would be more stuff happening. And, like, not to mention, society is still moving along. And, like, apparently inducing a, the idea of a wrist chip that's filled with everything, and that's the mark of the beast. It's really ridiculous, the pacing of this show, apparently. Because, like, they will mention something in a previous episode that is apparently ubiquitous the very next day. Again, it makes sense since it's all a dream. But still, they could have had a little realism. It's kind of silly. Kind of silly. Huh. But since I have been talking, I wanted to fill up the last 15 minutes with my talking. But yeah, like, if like apocalyptic events happen, they can actually there is stuff in place, like if something like I don't want to say the rapture, or like, I'm imagining like if something like nuclear winter happened, or like big apocalypse events, not like the slow thing happening right now. But, like, if we have a big event, yeah, like, something's in charge. Something will happen. But, to get off that depressing topic, let's raid someone. I'd like to thank you all for joining me tonight, and I hope you enjoyed our reading. I hope you enjoyed our reading of Frankenstein and everything that's gay and chaotic about it. Let's see here. Is that all who's on? Is that all who's on? Let me double check. No, that's not all who's on. Why are you lying to me? Why are you lying to me, computer? Ooh. Valdravia's replaying the return of the Oberdin. Oh. I was gonna raid a niece, but I raided a niece recently. I haven't raided Valdavia, so let's raid Valdavia. So, we're gonna be raiding, Valdavia, who is... Well, first off, they're a FFXIV. Oh my god. They're full of flesh. But they are an artist, very well known for their photo manipulations, their horror photo manipulations. But right now they're playing Return to Oberdin, which is one of my favorite games. I loved watching Lumi play it, and I loved watching Shinri play it. But thank you all for joining me. I wish you the very best of fates. And farewell. Bye.